last two episodes about my Audi Quattro, I pulled the motor out of it because I wanted to do a little refresh, and it turned out it was in pretty bad condition. The turbo compressor wheel was destroyed. It had some pretty massive cracks in the turbo manifold as well, and also something got sucked in, clearly that damaged that compressor wheel and got bounced off the piston a little bit. I've put it all back together. Everything has been completely replaced, every single gasket, all the way from the short block all the way up, and hopefully this episode we're gonna put it in the car and get it running again and take this thing for a drive. First, I want to get the transmission finished up so I can put these two things together. I'm going to swoop it into the car from the top, and hopefully that'll work better. Last time I pulled the transmission out the bottom and it was pretty tough to do, so we're going to see if doing it this way is any easier. This is the 016 transmission out of my Audi Quattro, and I got it cleaned up pretty good on the last episode, but before we put it back in the car, I wanted to make sure that this center diff function was working properly, and what it is basically a vacuum line that sucks on this actuator and it pulls this rod in to engage the 50-50 center diff lock. And the rear of the car has the same thing where you can lock the rear axle, and that's really obvious when that's working. I actually had to take that one apart and get the actuator unseized, so I know for sure that one's working really good, but it's not quite as obvious when the center diff is locked up. And the little light that's supposed to come on the dash isn't working either, because at some point this got ripped out before I even owned the car. So I want to take this thing apart and clean it up, pull on this rod a little bit, and we'll make sure that this thing is functioning properly, and then we'll put it all back in the car at some point, because you can't really access this once it's up there. It's very tight against the transmission tunnel and it's hard to reach. You can barely even see if this rod's moving. I took a look online to see if I could replace this vacuum actuator because I broke the little nipple off on here when I pulled the transmission out. Unfortunately, Volkswagen Audi Group doesn't make this anymore, but what's really cool is Mercedes actually makes a piece that is identical, literally with everything the same. Even the screw holes and stuff are exactly the same, so it would require no modification. They are $130, which I think is a little bit steep, so I don't think I'm actually gonna replace it now because this one seems like it's still working. It's holding air, so I'm gonna try to fix that little nipple and put this whole thing back in the car because I don't really want to wait any longer to get this transmission back there anyway, so we'll see if we can get this thing working properly. You're gonna have to bear with me because I'm kind of learning about this. I don't really know exactly how an all-wheel drive transmission works, but I think it's kind of like an open diff, just like the rear end would work on a car. So I'm turning this input shaft that goes to the engine counterclockwise, going this direction, and I'm getting the drive line side of it is spinning the opposite direction. So now what I'm wondering is if I lock the front axles in place so that these can't move, and I turn this while pulling on this actuator that's supposed to lock this diff. Let's give that a shot. So I'm at the back of the transmission here where the flange is for the drive line, and it's spinning freely. I've got the front ones zip tied so they can't move at all though. And once I push this locker up into here, oh, now I can't even turn this thing because it's pushing against those zip ties up here, keeping them from spinning. So what that's doing is effectively making sure that all four wheels are turning, and that's pretty much what Audi was famous for back in the day, was the ability to do that on the fly with a little knob on the interior of the car. You could basically just turn this thing on whenever you wanted, and then stage two was fully locking the rear end, so the rear end was locked up. So now that we know that works for sure, I'm gonna try and fix that actuator and make sure that that thing is properly pulling. I got a little bit bored while I was waiting for the epoxy on this vacuum actuator to dry, so I just did kind of a quick spray job on the transmission, and it's looking okay. It's gonna be under the car, so not a lot of people are really gonna see it, but the epoxy seems to be pretty dry now, so I can put this actuator back on here. We're gonna test it using my brake bleeder kit. It's like a vacuum actuated thing, so it should work perfectly for this, and we'll see if it pulls this rod, if it still has any life left in it. It seems like everything on this transmission is functioning properly. As soon as you pull this rod, it's definitely engaging something that is changing the behavior of the transmission. So I can only assume that that is correct. And this vacuum actuator is only taking about 15 inches of mercury of vacuum to pull on that rod, and that's far less than the engine makes, so I think we're good to go here. We're gonna put this transmission on the engine now, which is probably a little bit harder than it sounds. It shouldn't be too bad, but I definitely need to mess around with my whole ratchet strap situation and figure that all out first. In the last video, I took the engine off the engine stand so I could get the flywheel and the clutch assembly on, and I thought it was just gonna be a quick temporary thing, so I used this ratchet strap, and I wasn't really thinking because when I went to put it back on the engine stand, I figured out that this bracket doesn't fit over the flywheel. So this thing has basically just been sitting here like this. Now I wanna put the chain with the leveler thing that I have ready to go for the hoist, and we're basically just gonna have to drop this on the ground very carefully. I'm sure it'll be totally fine. There's a little bit of oil in it, but no big deal. We're just gonna take our time and try not to crush anything. So I've extended this beam out as far as possible. The rating for this is 1/2 ton. The good thing is this isn't a very big engine or transmission, so it shouldn't be a problem. This will help me pick the engine up as high as possible. It just has to get over the top of the core support, which isn't a huge deal. The problem is since the car is on a 4-post lift, the hoist has to slide under the lift, which means the lift has to be up about 6 inches or so to clear the feet of the lift. And then the lift is already another 4 inches or so. So I mean, we're practically a foot off the ground with the car just to get the hoist under it. I'm sure quite a few of you have done this under a car, and it's not that easy. I would say the hard thing about doing it on the hoist like this is that everything is just moving around. There's nothing that's bolted down, so I'm shaking the transmission and the whole engine's shaking too. Oh, there we go. I've got the transmission fully bolted on the engine now. I even torqued it up because I'm pretty optimistic that this is gonna work. Before I start to do this, I wanna take a look in the engine bay. I'm finally gonna lower this thing down for the first time in like 2 months and take a look at the engine bay. I kind of left it a mess, so I'll clean a few things up. Gotta get the old clutch line out of there. I think there's an old motor mount in there, and just make sure that it's ready to go. It's always nice to work on clean stuff and not get too dirty. The engine bay is looking pretty clean now. I used the same technique I did on the motor with this oven cleaner, kind of letting it sit and break up that grease and then blowing it off with this water steam device. One problem is this thing starts making so much steam you can't really see what you're doing, so you gotta take your time a little bit, but it's looking really nice. The firewall area is quite the mess still. It's just a very complicated wires and vacuum hoses and all this stuff. I'll probably get to that a little bit later once we get this engine started. I want to focus on that right now. I've done my best to make a big hole here where this transmission is going to slide through. I zip tied the axles back, and it's looking like there's going to be enough room. I think this will all work out. It's just going to be a matter of getting this thing in here diagonally and taking my time, just being really careful. And yeah, hopefully this doesn't take the entire day, but if it does, I'll be happy that the engine's at least in the car now. So I'm gonna get this thing as high as I possibly can, and then we're just gonna drop the lift down on top of these legs as soon as we get this thing rotated around. So it's not gonna be much different than when I pulled the thing out a few months ago, and the hole looks plenty big for this tiny little transmission to fit in, so feeling good. So the engine's getting pretty close to the back here, which means we're gonna need to start tipping it forward. Problem is as we start to tip this, it's gonna get a lot lower here, and this downpipe is probably gonna end up hitting the core support. Unfortunately, I can't pull this core support out. Some of the newer Audis allow you to pull the whole thing, which would have made this really easy, but just gonna take it an inch at a time, and eventually, hopefully the thing will go in. I'm getting close to getting this thing in, but it is really tight. I ended up taking off that power steering reservoir because it was hitting on the back of the motor, and now the wastegate is really tight against the firewall. And I've got the pulley and the alternator right here hitting the front on the core support, but I think, there's literally 1/2 inch in between some of these things if you kind of force it around. So once that slips past, we're in the green here. I think I'm probably close enough. I can bolt the motor mounts to the frame and start getting the engine, lined up to get it all on there. These are kind of odd. They bolt to the bottom of, the frame, and then the engine mounts sit on top of this. My other motor mounts were just completely trashed, so it'll be nice getting these new ones in. Before, you could basically hear the motor hitting the frame whenever you'd accelerate really hard. The engine's sitting in the car all on its own, no more hoist or anything like that. That makes me really excited, but there's still a lot more stuff we gotta do before we even get this thing started. Tons of components are still missing, just like so many stuff in these boxes over here that need to go back on before we can even attempt turning the key. Gotta plug in all these wires and all these vacuum lines that run to the motor. And the first thing I think I'm gonna do is reattach the axles, get the transmission mounts on, get the motor mounts tight, and then we can go from there. Getting some of these components installed on the bottom of the car is actually a lot more difficult than it sounds. There's not a whole lot of room for your hands or the tools to get in when you're doing the axles and the transmission mounts, but I got those all squared away. So I grabbed the starter and I decided to paint it with this Cerakote paint. This paint can withstand crazy temperatures and it's actually made for exhaust manifolds, but I figured it'd be a good idea to protect this thing as much as I possibly can since it's down there below the turbo. I've heard stories of these things failing and leaving people stranded with these cars. It's a known issue. So I'll end up putting a little fiberglass blanket over it to even protect it further, and hopefully it'll last a lot longer. This one's pretty new. I installed it about 2 years ago. Now we can finally bring the car down and play around with some of the stuff in the engine bay. Probably a good idea for me to install the clutch slave and the brake master cylinder and bleed all that stuff. That way when I do get the car running, everything is all set to go on that. The clutch does gather fluid from the brake master cylinder. It's kind of all one system, I think. So that'll be one big check out of the way, and then we can move on to the CIS fuel injection, which should actually be kind of interesting. I almost forgot about the oil cooler and the intercooler. It's stuffed down low here on the passenger side of the car. Everything is so cramped in here and it's very low. You can tell my oil cooler has gotten bashed by a couple things. This one has actually been replaced before. It's not the original one, and I might consider replacing it one day. It's not in terrible condition, you know, it's a little bit bent up. I would love to paint these things and make them look really nice, but I don't think you're supposed to paint stuff like this because it reduces the cooling ability because you're adding a layer that the heat has to transfer through. So you want to just leave this raw aluminum. I'll hit it with a wire wheel, make it look pretty, and then we'll stick it back in. Totally random side quest right now, but a buddy of mine posted some Quattro wheels for sale. I've already got a set of Riles and a set of Gaudis. Why would I need another set of wheels? Well, when you see a weird, rare, uncommon set of wheels for this car, you kind of want to jump on them, especially when they're as cheap as they are. He's not asking for much. So they're only 15s. I'm excited to look at them. Maybe I'll put like snow tires on them or something. I think would be really cool, but I love refinishing wheels, taking like some crummy old ones and making them look nice again. If any of you have seen my Gaudi wheel refinishing video, that was all good times. And we'll get back to working on the car soon. Such a typical Lauren thing to do, to buy some random ass wheels that I definitely didn't need right in the middle of an engine rebuild on a car, but now we'll have something fun to do, you know, further down the road, maybe in the fall or whatever. I'm gonna put the power steering stuff back together. It uses this bomb thing is what we call it. It basically fills up with a bunch of hydraulic pressure and helps assist the power brakes and the power steering. These always fail eventually and you can't buy them anymore, so I will be converting it in the future to an Audi S2 power steering and power brake option, which is just a typical style which uses vacuum off of the engine like most cars nowadays. Then we can do the CIS fuel injection, and that should be pretty easy, just replacing some hoses. We'll plug everything in, put some radiator fluid in the car, some oil, and then the thing might start. I'm getting a little nervous. I'm nervous that it's not gonna start. We'll see.
The K-Jetronic fuel injection system provides continuous but varied amounts of fuel to the induction tract of each of the engine cylinders.
Why would I be afraid that this isn't gonna start? Well, as simple as this engine is, there's actually a couple of components in here that are a little bit complicated. First of all, the CIS fueling. This is constant injection system, and it's a mechanical fuel injection. When you open the throttle body, it creates a vacuum that pulls this plunger up, and this opens valves that spray fuel through the fuel lines into the engine. Now, if this thing is out of tune, the car is either not gonna start or it's not gonna run well, so we're not gonna touch it at all. I'm gonna replace the fuel lines because some of these fuel lines were leaking gasoline into the engine bay. Super sketchy, and that shouldn't affect the tuning at all. So hopefully that will just be performing better. Secondly, there's a bunch of vacuum lines going all over the place. If these vacuum lines aren't plugged into the right thing, there's gonna be vacuum in places there shouldn't be, or lack of vacuum pressure. So I need to make sure that all these vacuum lines are hooked up. So this is quite a complicated rat nest of things. I think I did a pretty good job labeling everything, so I should be able to put it all in the right places. So that should be working properly. And I'm gonna replace a lot of this hose just in case there was any that was cracked or old, you know, And thirdly, I mean, a lot of these plugs up here all need to be plugged back in, and I labeled those too, but some of these plugs could be easily plugged into the wrong thing. Audi didn't do a very good job of making different plugs. Some of the 2-pin plugs you could just plug them anywhere where there's a 2-pin plug. So this is basically the last thing to do, and then we're gonna try to fire this thing. In all the excitement, I almost forgot to order the simplest thing, a new air filter for the intake. I mean, this thing looks pretty crummy. The new one looks like it's been sitting on the shelf for 20 years as well, but at least it's not dirty, so we'll slide that in there. The biggest pain in the butt with this is that very quickly the engine bay gets very cluttered, and there's a small amount of room to do anything, to work on anything, to reach all of these things, because once this is all put together, it's a lot. We're gonna do the fuel lines finally. It doesn't really matter, which fuel lines go where, because all of these always have the same amount of fuel pressure. They don't connect to the distributor at all. They're not timed in any way like a modern fuel injection system. I do kind of want to make sure that I do a good job with the lengths of everything so that they look nice and tidy, but other than that, there's not really much to mess up here besides the tuning of this, so I'm not gonna touch that at all. And then we're getting dangerously close here. I'm getting pretty excited. I saved the best for last, the most exciting. Gonna put 5, maybe 6 quarts of oils in here. Got the fuel pump unplugged. I'm just gonna let this thing prime for a sec. Let's just send it. I'm really excited that the Quattro is officially running now for the first time in 3 or 4 months, and it actually starts a little bit easier than it used to, I must say. It wasn't perfectly easy though. I had to pull some timing out of it, and I knew that that needed that because I could hear it firing too early and the flywheel was hitting off of the starter. It makes this terrible noise, and that was actually preventing it from getting started easily. So got that all fixed up. You just gotta turn the distributor cap a little bit. I need to revisit the shifter linkage. Somehow this thing got misaligned after I thought I had it perfect, and I can't get it into first and second gear. And also the slave cylinder is not exactly bleeding like it should. I got it to a point where I thought it was working and it suddenly stopped working. So that is a very important thing, clearly having a working clutch. Then we'll put the exhaust back on so I can actually idle this thing for, half an hour and get it up to temp without annoying everybody in the entire neighborhood because it is incredibly loud. We'll put the driveline back on and then take this thing for a rip. I cannot wait to drive it. Super excited for that. It was quite a mission getting this driveline rebuilt. I had a little bit of vibrations from under the car and I wanted to see what I could do with it. I was lucky enough to find a U-joint for it. This lady said that she had one sitting on her shelf for the last 20 years and it was the last one in stock. So that was pretty fun taking this whole thing apart and putting the new one in, seeing how that all works because I've never done this before. Luckily, these Rosettas on the outside are really easy to find because they come off of the axles from air-cooled Porsches. So there's still tons of these being made, very common part, and that replaces the little axle boot in here too. Finally, after going to 4 different places, I found a guy that was willing to try to balance this thing, and he said it balanced out really well and didn't need any modification. So I put a brand new carrier bearing on it. I think we're ready to put this back in the car now. That is pretty exciting. This car has never been able to start without me sitting here, like pedaling the throttle, finding the perfect amount of throttle to get it to start. So the fact that it just fired up like that gets me really hyped. Now, I'm sure you're saying to yourself, let's drive this thing. It's done basically, but I keep having some issues with the clutch. The clutch master cylinder will not bleed and I think it's blown out. I think I screwed it up with the bleeder system that I have, that pressurized bleeder, and it's old, it was ready to go. So I'm gonna let this thing sit here and idle for 20 minutes, let it do some heat cycles, get some coolant through it, get some oil through it, and we're just gonna have to wait a couple of days for the new clutch master cylinder to show up, but it seems like it's running pretty good. I hear a little misfire. I think maybe it just needs to be cleared out. We'll see. I'm definitely gonna throw the timing light on this thing and see where the timing's at, maybe play with that a little bit. master cylinder is installed. I think we are ready to go here. I've got pressure in the clutch. Fire this thing up. Woo! Well, we did it. The Quattro is out of the garage finally. And it's actually running pretty good. Shouldn't be surprised, right? I did an all right job. After I wash this thing, get all the dust off of it, and re-bleed, well, I haven't bled the brakes yet. Need to bleed the brakes because they're pretty dang spongy. We'll start taking this thing on longer and longer trips, and so that'll be pretty soon here. Make sure this thing is fully shooken down, and it'll be ready to take on a few road trips again. It's faster than it used to be. Oh yeah, turbo kicks in quick now. Woo! Oh man, I got chills just now. Can't rip on it too hard yet because I gotta let the clutch fully bake in, but we'll get around to that this week. Yes, that K24 turbo is so much better. The plan for the day is to drive the car 200 miles along Highway 14. This is the freeway that goes along the Columbia River, which splits Oregon and Washington. So hopefully there isn't any catastrophic failures here. This car has actually never left me stranded. I know you never say never, there's still time, but the thing's running pretty good. I will say the two things that I need to address: the motor mounts. I hate the motor mounts. They're way too stiff. They make the car vibrate. And I also installed some new brake lines, and the brakes are working really good, but I've got a sticky caliper now after bleeding the system. I'm on a little bit of a time crunch here because my wife and I plan on driving this car down the Pacific Coast Highway from Port Townsend, Washington, all the way down to San Francisco, California, and that trip is supposed to start in 13 days. So hopefully this thing is running really well. Hopefully I can get all of those little issues sorted out, but for the most part, I'm really happy with it. Today was supposed to be the nicest day of the week, and it's been basically raining the entire time, but I do see a little blue sky out there, so maybe it'll clear up a little bit. It's really important that I give this thing a good 500 miles of stop and go and pulling over and changing gears and all these things because my clutch needs to get broken in, and pulling over and filming myself doing little drive-bys is actually a really great way to do that. So you don't want to go full throttle yet. I have kind of gotten a little too excited, and I've actually seen the boost gauge hit 15 pounds of boost. So we're making 3 pounds of boost more than we were when I started rebuilding this motor. So that's really exciting. I'm gonna keep on driving here for a few hours and grab some lunch and then flip around and drive home. I'm pretty happy with the car. It feels like every time, the more and more I drive this thing, the happier and happier it gets. The German, all the little things that get upset when they sit too long, they start to come back to life. So this thing is really happy right now, and so am I. Almost 200 miles I did on the Quattro today, and it's feeling really strong. This turbo is making over 10 pounds of boost at 2,500 RPMs, and it's got a lot more to go. Once I can finally give this thing full throttle, it's much more responsive than the old turbo, especially without that cracked manifold, and it's just feeling great overall. I ran into a couple little hiccups. I popped a fuel pump fuse, got that resolved pretty quickly, and there was a bolt down in the suspension that was kind of rattling, so I tightened that up. All easy things that you want to find on these little shakedown drives, but I'm happy to say that I think this car is ready for our Pacific Coast drive here in less than 2 weeks. I wasn't expecting to cut it so close with the trip. I thought it was going to be done a few months ago, but you know how it goes with cars. Things don't fit, things don't show up when they're supposed to. You end up finding more things that are broken or stuff that has to be replaced that you weren't expecting. This ended up costing me about twice as much as I thought it would, rebuilding this motor, especially with the turbo that we found that was destroyed and all of that. That was easy 500 bucks out the window, but it's all good. I'm just really happy to see this car running again, and I'm really proud of myself getting this thing running. I'm not a mechanic. I'm just a guy pretending to be one on the internet, and I use as many resources as I possibly can, whether it's my friends or other people online, just reading forums, reading books, whatever it is. So I urge you to do that too and just learn. It's so much fun. Most of all, just really happy to see this car back on the road and enjoying it every single day. Check your polarizer.